All right, hello and welcome. Thank you for being here on this beautiful snowy day. I'm excited for this artist talk by wonderful local artist Amarama. Heart and Soul Art Created in the Pandemic is on view through February 27th. Please visit again soon and spread the word. This rooted exhibition is made possible through a grant from the Southeastern Minnesota Arts Council in cooperation with a private foundation. And the talk will be led by Rylan Monahan, who has personally interviewed Amarama and learned more about their practice. After some questions, she'll open it up for Q&A with the audience. Thank you so much again for being here.
Hello. Like Pam said, my name is Rylan Monahan, and I'm an art history major at Carleton College, but I'm also interning here at the Art Center. I had the wonderful opportunity to talk with Amarama in depth about their exhibit, and I'd like to share their exhibition statement and bio with you. This solo exhibition explores a variety of individual and collective experiences and emotions within the context of a global pandemic through mixed media sculptures and textile art. From the standpoint of a parent, the artist recalls conversations with their children about safety and change. As an individual, they use art making as a healing way to face the many deaths caused by COVID-19 and to explore their own non-binary trans voice. Vercnocke believes that the eyes are the windows to the heart and soul, and that art is a way to share one's testimony of art heart with others in life. Amarama is a Rochester-based sculptor and public artist who works with fiber and mixed media. Their mission is to bring to public spaces interactive artistic narratives based on their life experiences as a non-binary transgender person. Their work explores a wide range of relatable themes such as gender identity, life as a parent, and the pandemic's impact on our mental health. Thank you again for joining us today, and I think I'll go ahead and get started with some questions. So my first one, I would like to know how you selected the individuals whose eyes were capturing, and would you want to do similar work perhaps with a different subset of people?
Great question. Thank you, Ryan. All right, can you hear me now? Hi, everybody. A quick thank you to the Rochester Arts Center. Thank you to CMAC for this opportunity, and thank you all, more importantly, for creating and sharing the art community. Every single person on this wall and many others, and all of you all inspire me, first and foremost, and you've helped me through a lot of hard times through community, and I've been thankful to be able to give back today. So when I did my call for this part of this exhibit, it's a complicated exhibit, and that's intentional, and we're all complicated people. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's family and friends, chosen family that helps us get there. So when I did the call for this art exhibit, I put it out there a couple places through social media, tried to network. There were a few folks that I reached out to where their music was really gratefully impactful and helping during the pandemic, but also prior. And when this initially had started, it was for myself, just being very overly transparent and known to wear myself on my sleeve. I made sure I had permission from my wonderful partner and lovely family ahead of time to share. But I really am driven by the arts ecosystems here. And there's for a lot of reasons for that. As a queer person, I like to find community. I find that art is a universal language. I find that as a person with bipolar type 2, it's a great way to communicate when words fail me. And I find that art is a great way to process those very emotions. I strongly believe in tackling and sitting with, sometimes nicely, my hard emotions, whether it's anger, sadness, depression, my anxiety. And that's something, I'm 41 years old, but that's something that's taken me a lifetime to learn. And I'm really thankful for art for that reason. So when I reached out, I wanted to hear from others in the community who had also been in whatever way, shape, or form impacted by the pandemic. It was also, the secondary reason was myself, I had 2 or 3 jobs as well, and just suddenly having everything put to stop, a lot of my fellow artists and musician friends and fellow creatives their second, third jobs that were also in the service industries predominantly were really triply hit hard. So this was a way to deal with my own mental health by keeping my hands busy. And there were moments where there were some times where I was not productive for a couple months at a time. And that's just as valid. You don't have to be productive all the time. But this was more of an opportunity to be able to sit with, try to reach out to friends so that folks can interact with them, but also learn more about my community because of the lack of being able to go to places and new experiences. So with this search for fellow individuals, and I really wanted to make sure it was diverse and very queer-friendly and have accessibility for BIPOC individuals. So it was really predominant. Each person, I offered them a sitting fee for their picture of their eye, and then all of the art exhibit they get to keep afterwards when the exhibit's done, because I love and appreciate you all so much.
So you talked a little bit about how COVID impacted the way that you approached art in general. But as the pandemic continues to progress, where do you see your art reflecting those changes?
I always liked to work with fiber art prior to the pandemic to make it accessible for those who are vision impaired or sensory seeking while still being beautiful for those of us who are sighted. The reason for that, my daughters gave me permission. One of my kids is on the autism spectrum. So there was one time where one of my past pieces, Kyrie was feeling a piece of my artwork going, oh, Mom, Dad, I can feel the colors. It's because I had brown llama, yellow Tulsa silk, and blue Icelandic sheep wool on one of my pieces. So that's what got me to thinking, oh, how would you describe artwork to those who are vision impaired or see the world through touch, like my daughter? So that's something that has always been near and dear to me, for that accessibility and inclusivity. When the pandemic hit, because things could not be touched, rightfully, morally, ethically so, because of not spreading COVID, not being able to touch. Touch is one of my love languages, and that frustration of I can still needle felt, but I can't, the point of why I made what I made, I cannot do it the same process was really frustrating. So for me, I wanted to explore texture visually, and I wanted to intentionally use materials in a lot of my sculpture work that would hopefully make people have that reaction of they want to reach out and touch it, but they can't. They're all, each color is a different type of fiber. So when the individuals get them, they can safely touch that artwork. And all of the eyes also kind of represent pre and during that early onset of the pandemic. And a lot of my sculptures with the textures, those different I wanted that intentionally there to visually play on it, and hopefully when the things are safe again someday, my sculptures, people can interact with them. Just for right now, it's that I want the frustrations that I feel to be there visually until it's safely able to be touched. Regarding to my work in the future, also I'm very blunt about it again. I do have psoriatic arthritis, so I've been thankful to be needle felting the past 15 plus years. Unfortunately, with my last MRI scan a couple years prior to the pandemic, I've been doing this for 30, 40 years, and I'll still needle felt, but this is also my way of trying to quietly say eventually this new chapter in my life of working with sculpture work. I got the okay from my doctors because it's a different muscle memory that's being used, but it really, that's also another part of my grieving process, is that this is art form that has brought me comfort mentally, has helped me connect with community, and it's an art form that I have to change for my physical health. And this is my journey of trying to find also my mental health and well-being. Where does that play, that kind of thing?
So you mentioned the sculptures a little bit, and I'm interested in what way might the deconstruction of the body parts in your sculpture work and also in the eyes potentially impact or demonstrate your relationship with gender?
I identify as transgender, non-binary, and I just really want to make this very clear. I am stating my story. Each individual person in my beautiful LGBTQ plus family has their own story. I'm not speaking for all non-binary folk, and I'm not speaking for all transgender folk. I am a white person with a lot of privilege, and I just really want to hammer that out there, that please listen to everyone's stories. They're very valid and very important. That being said, I don't identify as a woman. I have lived a life where that is how society sees me, due to with my mental health concerns, how I've tried to access hormones, how I've tried to access surgery options. As a plus size person, it's been very hard. That those options aren't necessarily available for me. After 8 years of therapy, I'm in a much better place. But my whole life, I'd like to imagine I've understood that even though I am this cute little bouncy, plus size, wonderful person, I know that society, first and foremost, usually 9 times out of 10 sees me as female, first and foremost. And there's nothing wrong with femininity. It's just something that has never fit well for me. And my whole life, I've been seen, whether prior or pre or during my transitioning, as there's times where my body parts have been tokenized, and it's really frustrating. I still remember what it feels like to walk into a job interview when I was 6 months pregnant, and this is no fault of my kids. I've always wanted kids my whole life, but I know that feeling when you walk in a job interview, and legally they can't say, oh, you aren't getting this job because you're pregnant, but that sinking feeling, I know what that's like, and it's horrible. And especially when you're trying to find income, you're newly graduated and you're crushing debt in school. Those feelings, if when I talk to fellow folk who identify as female, that's many experiences that they've experienced. So at the same time, there are certain parts of my body when I have been working with my mental health the past 8 years and attending therapy for my gender dysphoria, I experience it a lot on my chest. I actually like my hips. And again, I don't speak for all fellow queer folk. I'm not speaking for all non-binary folk. This is just my own personal story. But at the same time, I like to express that gender euphoria and dysphoria texturally. So for me, the piece it's been nicknamed the disco butt, but that one, that shiny when the light hits it, that's how I feel when I'm experiencing my gender euphoria. The one that has the pearls all over it, and it's not put together quite right. It's this beautiful thing that feels like it's slapped onto a surface. That's how my gender dysphoria feels. When I've tried to wear masculinity or femininity by society standards, it's something that's never felt like it fit quite right on me. And one of my personal favorite sculptures is actually the Thick Among Us one. So 2 reasons. I personally, my whole life, have always felt safe in colors. The color blue, that color blue has been a safety color for me. I love the colors yellows and oranges, but that's something I've been learning to deprogram, because so much earlier times in my life, I always associated those colors as being harsh, but I found so much joy in all those different colors. But the reason why the Thick Among Us one, that's a game that I love to play with my kids called Among Us. Well, in the game, for those who don't know, it's kind of like hide and seek with the characters, and the imposter is the person that's going around trying to, hurt other people and stuff. But the imposter, no one knows who the imposter is. You have to find it out. So this was my way of, because during the time of the pandemic, my gender dysphoria went down a lot, because I could be myself authentically at home. And that was a surprising thing that I found out I didn't have to gender perform. Stuff that I wasn't realizing I was doing a lot to cope. And my whole life, when I came out in 8th grade, as at the time bisexual, since language has evolved, I consider myself pansexual, and for me, I consider it under the umbrella of bisexuality. All totally valid, but even when I come out with my sexuality just as much as my gender, there's still a part of me in the back of my head that feels like an imposter. It's something that I've talked with fellow bisexual folk, fellow pansexual folk, that is really heartbreaking when you have your sexuality or gender erased based on who your partner is, based on what your clothes are. And that's one of the reasons why I'm all for always dismantling the gender binary. Celebrate where you fit on. I celebrate my cis friends just as much as my trans friends. But there's always this notion at the back of my head that I'm always trying to deprogram, is that I'm not an imposter, I'm valid. And one of the things that's really helped me, I'm 41 years old, but my whole life I've kind of never given a flip what people think on some level. And that'll always be there. But especially after I had childbirth, I've wanted my kids my whole life. And that's when my gender dysphoria hit me really hard. My hormones are not my friend. Sadly, I found out on either end of the spectrum. And I kind of had an epiphany one day in my therapy and after meds, and this was after a time in 2010 when I sought help at Generos. And with that, I came to the realization that society standards, I will never be thin enough. I will never be queer enough. My sexuality will never be XYZ enough. And that's okay because I know that I'm enough, and what I'm finding for myself, it is enough. So for me, the Among Us bus, it's actually my most favorite one. It's the simplest one, but I love that color. I feel safe in it. But I think that there's something relatable that during the pandemic, as we're emerging more, I'm finding more and more I'm getting misgendered again. There are some days where it's hard to wear my binder. It's painful for me. There's a lot of good binders out there. Don't stop from finding one. GCTV is a really good company. But there's ways that I'm finding that I'm having to put those mental shields up again as we have been more emergent in the pandemic. And that's something at the back of my head I just have to remind myself that I am enough for what I need for my comfort level. And I hope others acknowledge and understand that even if you are feeling like an imposter sometimes, you're not. It's our brains lying to us. So know that you can find solace in community. You can find help with therapy if you need it. You can find help with medicine. And the other big thing, and sorry if this is a little off topic, but it to me relates, the whole of the exhibit is, to me, community. And what does that mean? And I find a lot of help within my queer communities. I find a lot of help within my art communities. And individuals' musics, their creativity, their visual art, and more. That's such a powerful thing for many different ages and stages of creative life. So this is my way of trying to celebrate individuals. I want the QR codes. I'm hoping people further explore and support everyone on this wall, whether it's a like or a share on their social medias. Check out their Patreons or more. And there's so many additional wonderful individuals besides who's on the wall. So I hope people continue to support the arts, because during the pandemic, the arts were really, really impactful for helping a lot of people. Maybe people watch more Netflix, maybe they listen to more music on Bandcamp. Where would we be without the arts in this digital age? But I also want folks to understand that those artists and those creatives, those musicians and more, they were really impacted a lot, in my opinion, more so with a lot of how the pandemic hurt a lot of folks and individuals. And in regards to these two sculptures, these two are actually my favorite also. They kind of, for me, symbolize life pre-pandemic. A lot of the different coils and the textures, that symbol, that circle, it for me gives me hope of that things are bad now, but it gives me hope for something to look forward to. That circle will keep coming around. This beautiful wheel, my dear friend Leah gave it to me early on in the pandemic, and it's so special to me. because this gives me hopes and dreams for the future. This piece was, again, it's the simplest one, it was the hardest one for me. I've experienced a lot of personal death with some family members, and I've known 2 individuals who have harmed themselves and aren't here anymore during time of the pandemic. And having those talks with my kids have been really important to me. My daughter Rowan actually helped me make this piece also. And she's here, she's an amazing artist too, I'm proud of her. I love you. The butterfly to me symbolizes hope, but it's also a creature that has a short lifespan. And when we talk to our children, for me as a parent, it's a hard and necessary topic to talk about. My father, that I learned a lot of my art skills from, he has dementia. And there are some days where it's hard to talk with him about certain things, but a lot of the artwork that I learned from my dad. And there's one thing about talking about death to your kids, about the birds and the bees and life, but then when there's a whole nother level of time in the pandemic, how it's affected a lot of individuals with various disabilities, and how there's a lot of racial injustice and everything, those are important talks to have to your kids. And again, I'm saying this as a white person with a lot of privilege. I want my kids to be able to go out and listen to other BIPOC individual folks, just listen and support and use their privilege to help their communities. So for me, those coils in this particular piece, and the cotton's a really fragile material. Wool looks like it's a fragile material, but wool is very, very strong. And the reason why I like fiber arts is the textures, the strength, and I feel that strength within the art community, within chosen family, and there's a lot of love and care there.
I think my final question for you before I open it up to some Q&A is there anything else that you hope the viewer comes away with after doing the Heart and Soul exhibit?
I think with the pandemic and us protecting ourselves and our communities when we wear masks, that all we've been seeing have been folks' eyes. And I hope that people take this opportunity to learn more about the individuals, to learn more about themselves, how they present themselves to the world, and how I hope that the community can further support all of these individuals. And again, it can be something as simple as a click or a like on their Instagrams, checking out their Patreon, when you feel safe, going to one of their live music shows, and more. Because a lot of these creative individuals on this wall and more, and many, many more, I love you all. I see you all right here right now. You're all valid, you're all important, and you all make this creative space one that's, I always seek you all with hours to live, not hours to kill. And with everything that's happened in the pandemic that's been hard and hurtful, I hope you find solace, peace, love, and acceptance in a lot of these fellow creatives. And if my artwork helps you in any way, shape, or form to ask more questions, please honor yourself, sit with yourself, and ask those questions, because you're valid, you're important. I celebrate y'all, I love y'all. You're all amazing. Seriously.
I love you too.
Try to look around, not to the hard stairs, but there's so many amazing folks here. I love you all. I also gotta say a really quick thank you to my family, and especially my wonderful partner, Andy. Andy's been okay with me sharing this. Like, Andy was the first fellow openly bisexual person I'd ever met 20-some years ago. And I fell in love with his artwork as an artist, first and foremost. And in the past couple months, him and the kids have really been putting up with, because my art studio became our basement. And oh my gosh, the wonderful, joyful mess. So a huge thank you to my family for putting up with me. And just really making, because they're the ones who have to live with my mental health. And my philosophy is I can't take good care of my kids if I don't take good care of myself. And a lot of this art making has helped me process and regulate my mental health during this pandemic. So genuinely thank you all so much for those opportunities to be inspired and make creative art. I guess I'm like that.
Well, I'm going to open it up now if anybody in person or online has any questions for Amarama. Is that the microphone?
Oh, okay. Are there any questions? Bombardment. Yay. Oh, yeah. Hey, Chris.
Hi. This is amazing. Like, it's so beautiful, and it's been enjoyable. Like, watch you, like, at a distance on social media, put out the calls, and you know, just all of the love and hard work. It's amazing to see this. Congratulations. It's beautiful. As I was looking at the, you've got these kind of bodies without arms and legs, and then you've got eyes without a face. And I kind of wondered, how do you think about the kind of absence of like the identity of an individual, or the expressive parts of our bodies, our hands and our faces? Is there something about how you think about that in relationship to how we navigate social media, or just generally how do you think about
Ooh, that's a great question. And thank you that actually reminded me of a point that I forgot to mention. I just really want to emphasize this. If you are experiencing situations, you need to get help from a therapist in medicine. But I experienced mild forms of disassociation with my bipolar. I do not have dissociation identity disorder, but for me, I get floating sensations when it's a panic, and a lot of that's from also past PTSD diagnoses that I've had. But I experience a floating sensation. My limbs feel heavy. I feel detached from my body. So for me, this exhibit kind of embodies that aspect of there's something not fully whole here.
It embodies disembodiment.
Exactly. So thank you for hitting it. Knowing that you picked that up, I'm like, oh, good, I'm successful.
It's really amazing.
And as the viewer, that's one of the things I'm hoping to create empathy and understanding of in regards to with my mental illness. There's moments where, in regards to the body pieces, and ironically, I actually love hands. They're the most expressive feature. It's a great way to communicate with others, and for my friends who are hard of hearing or who are deaf, it's a life-saving, great communicative tool. And it's been interesting to me because seeing folks when they're wearing masks in the pandemic, how more expressive they are. And I know I'm there, as I was telling someone, I'm like, I can't do my usual, so I'm like, hey, I do. And it's something I'm inadvertently finding myself doing more with the body parts too. So I guess like in regards to, I kind of want the viewer to subtly feel a little bit or understanding of, hey, this is how, because with the onset of the pandemic and still currently, there's every person's experienced various degrees of trauma. And again, I'm saying this as a person with a lot of white privilege. So I'm hoping the empathy that people understand with, especially my fellow white individuals, is that let's think about what our fellow friends and folk of color were experiencing on the daily before the pandemic, and just as much post-pandemic. What can we use for our empathy to understand and support and uplift all of those individuals? Because that needs to be done. So, that's a great question. Sorry, I hope I answered.
It's really good to be that insight.
Thanks for asking the question. Any other questions, or? Oh, yeah.
I'll ask perhaps an overly practical question. Do you have a favorite sheep breed that you like to sell with for the home?
Oh, yes. So as anyone knows, I get a lot of my wool locally from Happy Hog sheep, and there's some farmers that I know that they have Jacob's sheep, and then there's some that have, Icelandic Merino cross sheep. Icelandic sheep are really interesting because their hair isn't as curly, but it's more crimped. And they're a type of sheep that was originally bred for really cold, crummy climates like Minnesota. And it's fun to needle felt with it and spin with it. It's considered a little bit more of a coarse textural wool. But in order to dye, when I dye my wool colors, I have to break it down with an acid, and the acid I use is apple cider vinegar. But after you break down those fibers, they get so much more softer sometimes. And then also how you comb it out on a carding drum makes it really soft. So the whole process of needle felting is very textural and creative, but also just getting those materials is so fun to do. Like for me, it's like, oh yeah, I can see this as a form of stimming, whether it's the sound of your tools that you're using from when you needle felt, it makes this kind of noise. When you're creating the various fiber colors and the very beautiful colors you can make, that's kind of a lot of fun to work with that way. But I do like some of the merino cross sheep are really nice. There's just outside of town, and it's been a couple years because when I bought the wool from them, I bought, Andy can attest, I bought many poundage, like probably 100 some pounds of wool that I bought from them many years ago, and it lasts me for several years for my small art business. But one of my most favorite sheep, oh my gosh, are those South Down baby doll sheep. I jokingly call them one skein sheep because they're so tiny. They're originally a meat sheep, but they're baby sheep that they have. They're like the size of a cat. They're just so cute and tiny, and they're so adorable. Oh my gosh! And their hair doesn't grow very long, so it's not necessarily ideal for spinning, but it's so soft and wonderful and almost silky for the different textures when I needle felt. So that's kind of the fun of it. Different breeds of sheep have different textures. And then to give you a feel, like when I'm feeling llama or alpaca, I just like to close my eyes and feel the fibers because they almost feel like silk. And then that gets me into thinking, like when they take the different fibers, especially alpaca, it almost gets this shimmery shine to it. So that's something I invite folks to understand too. When it's safe, of course, make sure you wash your hands, pandemic, that being said, when you have permission to touch different fibers, sometimes just take that moment to sit with yourself and feel those different textures. Maybe you have a silky blanket at home. Maybe you have a cottony pillowcase. Maybe you have something that's wool and warm. Ask yourself, how do those textures elicit different feelings and memories? And ask yourself, just sit with yourself and see what comfort, if it brings that to you. Maybe it's something that's averse, like, oh, this is an overwhelming sensory. And that's okay too, but go ahead and sit with those feelings and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? It's based on the touch. And that's kind of the thing I love with fiber arts and needle felting is I can bring that concept of touch, which is so oftentimes not used, and rightfully so. Things can be dangerous for your materials in the art world. They can be fragile and not meant to be touched. But I always like to ask people, like, this is this other side of comfort that we can sit with and explore with fiber arts. That's a lot of fun to do, so. Hey, good question. I hope I answered you. Thank you. No worries. Any other questions, or? Thank you all for coming. I am so honored to have you all here. And thank you for helping me honor all the amazing folks up on the wall. And please continue to honor all the amazing folks within your own communities. And please celebrate and share that. I mean, where would we be without the arts? I strongly feel that in regards to the arts, society needs us more than we need them. And how can it's one thing to make a pretty picture, but what can we do that's helping our art help our communities? That's what I think is really important too as an artist. So there's many different ways of being an artist. There's no right or wrong way, but at the end of the day, I know I wouldn't be here without all of you.